everybody.
Hello. Happy Friday, folks.
Happy Friday. What a week. You're listening to or watching Move to Amend, Making Sense with Move to Amend. So we will talk about the news of the week and how it connects to corporate rule and our amendment. Milly?
My name is Milly Harmon. I'm the outreach coordinator. Joining Shelly here with you today, trying to make sense of the week, but honestly, as we were preparing, so little sense.
We're going to do our best today.
But I think we want to really jump in and sort of ask ourselves, a lot of people's movements have been on the rise this year. A lot of really strong demands from people. And why are these not being met? Why are these not being talked about by our representatives? Why are these issues not even being touched on this convention that just happened this past week? And we will underline, we are a nonpartisan organization, but it is fair to say that there is some commentary to be had on the issues that arose here, or didn't arise rather, because that's really what I want to talk about.
Why are things not rising?
51 million Americans are unemployed. The amount of people uninsured also on the rise. What are we at about now, Shelly?
I think prior to COVID, it was like 44 million. And I think like 6 million so far have lost their employer or union-based health insurance. We'll talk more about that later. And I think that's about twice as much as the number in the late aughts recession. So we're already like blowing that out of the water. So we're doing great.
And to add on that, our world is, dying. Global warming is real. California is on fire. Yet none of these things, unemployment, health insurance, or, global warming, are really being addressed right now. Why?
Well, we will talk about that. So did you have an answer for that? Were you setting up something?
I wish I had a clear-cut answer for that. Gee, I do. I mean, I think that the best that we can surmise from that is because there is a lot of money invested in not giving us solutions there. There's a lot of big corporate interests, and they have the power, right? They have constitutional rights. They've got money. They've got the ability to, operate, globally. So where does that leave us? What room do we have to operate when? So obviously the conversation is so obviously being edited by big money interests.
Yes, it is. And we're going to talk more about some of the things you can expect to see more of leading up to the election in that round related to healthcare. I just want to take a minute and say hi to Jessica and Doug and Joseph from Maui. That's exciting. Welcome.
Aloha. We're learning how to pay attention to comments. Last time we did this, we didn't even know how to get to them. So we really enjoyed your
last time we ignored you. We didn't know what tab to click. So sorry about that. We'll do better this time. And if you have any questions that you want to ask, feel free to drop them in the comments. Hey, Greg, welcome. So, yeah. Should we go into
Well, let's talk about some CARES Act. I know you have some stuff going on locally, a little dispute going on about the allocation of funds around your CARES Act. I can't imagine that happened anywhere else. So let's start in Sacramento.
Yeah, it's so I just want to say first, you should look into how these funds are being spent in your community. And here in Sacramento, California, so we're the capital of the most progressive state in the United States. And most people would think that in a city like that, or in a county like ours, that this wouldn't happen. But alas, amid the largest uprising in US history, with a call to defund the police and the worst public health and economic combo crisis that any of us have ever seen and could imagine. Our county got about $181 million through the CARES Act to presumably address the crisis. And 85% of those dollars went to policing, probation, and jails. And so a very small fraction of it went to public health. And so that kind of happened quietly. And there was obviously a lot of people very angry about it. Just the most tone deaf, irresponsible thing you could imagine being done with that funding happened here. And so I was watching a county board of supervisors meeting earlier this week, and there were some public health officials that went before the board to ask for, I think, $45 million out of the general fund, since they didn't get adequate funding through the CARES money. And I watched them be gaslit by our board of supervisors and told that they didn't go through the right paths to request the money. That's just, you can't say that, right? We're in a crisis. Everybody knows what's supposed to happen with that money. You can't really use some weird little bureaucratic loophole argument there. And that's what they tried to do. And it was just really incredible to behold and watch this happen in real time. So they did end up getting that money because, of course, they looked really terrible for what they had done. But anyway, that happened in Sacramento. This is where things are supposed to be more progressive. We're Democrat-led. And so if you don't know what happened to your CARES dollars, look into it. And if you don't like it, hold your electeds accountable, because this is terrible from top to bottom of leadership right now.
And, we're constantly looking for roles right now. I think as many of us are still isolated, and wanting to engage. And this is I think, big need for many communities is to actually look at the books and the budget and see, where did this money, where did this aid, and actually, where are these funds usually allotted? And are there other community services that perhaps our community could use the funds, in a more beneficial way? So I think, a good way to start, and certainly a word to the wise. I also want to, mention, we've heard over and over again that Indigenous and communities of color are being, hit hardest by the pandemic. But also when it comes to the CARES Act allotment, that has been terribly biased in itself. We were looking at a study this morning that showed the distribution of billions of dollars in COVID relief meant to go to hospitals, completely disproportionately allotted through, struggling poor Black communities. And this was actually a Harvard study, which also noticed discrepancies in the ways that the CARES Act was allotted to tribes. Was that it based on HUD data, which was completely skewed, didn't actually consider, where HUD didn't have an active place, they didn't have data at all. So basically, a tribe's own data and the U.S. Census Department data was completely ignored. And some actually showed up as having a population of 0, which is completely ridiculous. The allotment was also really slow to come out for a lot of places, until May, I think, locally, here in Arizona, did our tribes receive any of the assistance that was specifically allocated to them in the CARES Act. So I think, as you know, we obviously, Congress went home without giving us anything more, but I think we still have a job to be examining where the funds are going that we've already received, and gosh, knock on wood, we'll receive in the future.
Yes, and I just want to take a moment to welcome some of the new folks that joined. Sandy, hi. Amy from Asheville. Judith, hope you're doing okay out there. I know it's smoky in Santa Clara County, like it is here. Tamika, nice to see you. Hope you're doing good. Karen and Yolanda, who is from here in Sacramento. So just to also name that everyone who's in Sacramento or Santa Clara County is breathing some really toxic air right now, because we are having a really hard time with the fires. But yeah, long story short, with the CARES Act money, it's like being withheld from the communities that need it most and being used to police communities that don't want to be policed. And it's absurd. And so we will keep an eye on that. All right, what do we want to talk about next?
Well, I mean, fires, geez, that's something to talk about, huh?
Yeah. So today's a little better than yesterday. I'm in Sacramento. There's, fires to my north and to my west and to my east. And so yesterday I woke up, and it was the first day that I smelled it in my house. Thankfully, I have air purifiers that were donated from Move to Amend supporters 2 years ago, when we had the camp fire that actually impacted one of our, who's might be watching now, Jessica, who's from Paradise. So that was a really hard year, and looks like we're going to have another hard year. So I'm grateful for the air purifiers, and I hope that this ends soon. But we have fewer resources. I don't even want to use that word. It's dehumanizing.
Where are the people who fought our fires? Who are the people that usually fight our fires?
We rely on slave labor in California to fight fires. And so this year, because of COVID, we don't have, a lot of people are sick. A lot of people in prison are sick. So I guess our numbers are down for prisoners that we can use to fight our fires. So it's very evident how reliant we are on slave labor this year. And
these fire camps made of prisoners have been so infected and so undertreated that they are unable to respond to these wildfires, that we rely on them. Our communities, the safety of our communities are reliant on these folks, and we can't even provide them health care.
Right. Yeah, and then another thing that was pretty gutting the other day, one of my friends was covering the fires, and he went out to Vacaville, which is about halfway between Sacramento and San Francisco. And there's a prison, and there's also like a medically fragile facility for people convicted of crimes. And both of these facilities, everybody else was under evacuation orders. The fires were very, very close to this prison, and my friend was there. I mean, he had to leave because it became unsafe. And I think at this point they're still in there, and the fires didn't reach them, but it just looked like they were never going to evacuate this prison. Everybody else was leaving. And so thankfully, the fire has still been kept at bay, but I think they were just going to let everybody die. And I know I saw an activist who was formerly incarcerated there who said that fires that had been further away, that when he was incarcerated there, would just choke them out. So there's no doubt that they're suffering, even if they're not actually in the fire. And so anyway, it's sad. The whole thing is gutting, and we don't know where it's going to go and how many more years we're going to be doing this.
Well, and it's such a clear indicator of climate devastation. And even your governor has been very outspoken and was on his debut during the DNC last week. But I guess I also would lead into, what are we doing about that? What are we talking about in terms of curbing fossil fuel emissions? I was pretty saddened to see that, though it was present on the 2016 Democratic platform to be rolling back from giving subsidies to the fossil fuel industry, we have now, and it wasn't like we didn't have no firm date. It wasn't like in 20 something, we're going to be subsidy free. It was just one of those vague promises, but at least it was a vague promise. And now we're here, and they've completely removed that from the 2020 platform, and California's on fire, and we've got hurricanes coming at our Gulf. Like, I'm confused.
I mean, are you? Well, I mean, it's absurd, right? But going back to your question at the beginning, it's literally impossible to do the right thing on any of these fronts when you're taking money from the people who would be negatively impacted, their bottom line, their profit margins. That's really it, right?
But this 4 years ago, why is corporate power growing? Please, someone help me out. I'm shattered. People are out in the streets in bigger numbers than we've ever seen. And yet our demands are ignored because the powers that be are still there doling out the big bucks for us to just see what we need to see on our televisions.
So Erica's asking, what can we do? And that's a really great question. It's starting to become very clear, at least to me, that we're not going to be able to vote our way out of this. And that it's going to take a combination of direct action, unrelenting direct action, and a radical systemic solution like the We the People Amendment, which most of you here probably are familiar with it, but if you're not, that's what we're doing right now, is organizing for the 28th Amendment. There are other amendments out there, but ours is the most systemic solution because it both overturns Citizens United and the doctrine that money is free speech. And it also gets to the root of that, which is the idea that corporations are persons and that they're entitled to the same constitutional rights that we are as individuals. And so we can talk about the different ways that our amendment would both, allow us to do the things that we need to do right now for the survival of our species and for, the health and well-being of everyone in our country and abroad, because that's a thing. And so, yeah.
We were just talking right before this about, obviously, Medicare for all. And even if that were something that were demanded or being represented at all, the powers that be have the ability, corporations, huge, big pharma, private insurance companies have the ability to take us to court and sue with the same amount of rights as an individual to say, no, actually, this isn't working for us, this whole public plan you got going, because we lose money and that infringes on our rights. So really, we want to talk about Medicare for all. We want to talk about actually getting, sustainable alternatives for energy. But like, we don't have power yet. We have to take the initial step of removing all corporate constitutional rights, all of them, because they have used one to get the other, to get the next, to get the next. It started out with the 14th Amendment, here we are, now you're a person, and they keep gaining traction. We can't rely on Congress to keep giving us these promises, because these promises are false. They do not stand up against the humongous, transnational global corporations that can say, actually, you're not coming back next campaign. Why? Because they also have the huge influence of money and speech in our elections. Anyway.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely true. I mean, just think about it. I think the latest polling showed that 70%, I mean, we're in a pandemic, right? People are losing their insurance. If you like it, you can keep it. And people are realizing that is a joke, right? Because you don't get to choose anything about your insurance, and it can be changed at any time. But also, in an economic downturn, you lose everything, and then you can't afford the marketplace, and you don't have money for the premiums and deductibles and co-pays through, if you don't have income, it's just impossible. So more and more people are going to start falling through the cracks. And that's why there's growing support for Medicare for all, which was popular before, but is now, I think 88% of Democrat voters want Medicare for all. So you would think that would translate into our representatives representing that desire. And yet there's only a handful of people in Congress who are actually speaking up for their constituency. And the reason why, it's, you can probably go right in and look at their funding and understand why their position is what it is on Medicare for all. So, yeah. Let's see.
Well, and I also kind of want to add, because we're using this term Medicare for all, but like, that's the sweetest, most flowery term that we could come up with, giving our representatives the most leeway to like trash what they're going to give us. You know what I mean? This is a very nice, very wiggle wormy word. And like, we're not saying single payer, we're just saying Medicare for all. That's an expansion of a program that is not exactly working for us as it stands for our folks. They still need alternative programs to, offset the cost of that. And now, what? We're talking about removing the public option. Now, I think we should be a little bit more exact with our terminology, because this is important. This is not a saving grace solution, but it was something. Shelly, do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. So, initially when we saw the term Medicare for all become watered down and lose all meaning through the primaries, and I think that was on purpose. But what was meant by the bill that Bernie Sanders was advocating for was single payer. So we're moving all profit interest out, no insurance middlemen, and and then you would have everything free at point of service. So it would reduce costs overall. There's more like negotiating ability under single payer to get prices down, and taking out all these middlemen and profit interests would just reduce costs overall, because right now, obviously, we're paying on average twice as much for our healthcare as other leading countries. And let's see.
And prescription costs have been mentioned in the chat, is completely debilitating. And what we pay for the same medications in this country, because we have given the power to these big pharma companies, is it's compared to other places, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot of people who are insured. So there's, this underinsurance problem or just inability to actually go seek care because all you can afford are your premiums. You can't afford deductibles, you can't afford your prescriptions and other out-of-pocket copays. So, people don't realize that's a whole other layer to this is you can have insurance and be deterred by the cost of going to get the care that you need. So, yeah. So that was what we were talking about during the primaries. It's so funny to look back at the arguments, at the time and how just the conversations that we were having earlier in the primaries that I was having with, people who thought that it was too extreme or were believing a lot of this propaganda that was coming out about it. And now it's just really obvious and very clear to almost everyone how terrible our system is and how, it just falls apart. So many people and more are gonna lose their health care. So the concession was going to be a public option. That was kind of what was used to placate, it's a step in the right direction, which actually, if you know anything about single payer, that's not moving in that direction. That's not actually true. It's moving in a different direction and isn't taking us any closer to single payer. And now, as of the past week or so, there's a lot of walking back on even the public option. There's a lot of, so I don't know what we do, Yeah, we do need to get Trump out, but, we also can't pretend that the Democratic Party isn't just royally failing us right now. And precisely because of how much they're connected to these special interests that don't care about us.
Right. Of course, we're not discouraging anyone not to vote. We certainly, but the point is both of these big parties are completely beholden to corporate interests, period. Let's not pretend otherwise. Let's not pretend that whole, all of those candidates up on stage debating each other for the last year wasn't just some dance, because it was. The things that they were talking about, even vaguely, are not being represented now. And the conditions are so much worse.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just, I honestly wouldn't have expected them to do so badly in this moment, even though I don't have the highest expectations to begin with. This is just really hard to watch and behold. Those who are trying to represent us in Congress, are being marginalized. And the irony of Colin Powell getting 2.5 minutes to speak when AOC got 60 seconds really tells you all you need to know about what they're prioritizing right now. And it's not the people.
And so many military endorsements. I'm sorry. It just has been really scary to me to see how many figures that if we had talked about them 4 years ago, we would have talked about them in a very different way. And now we're showing up endorsing Biden and we're lifting them up like heroes.
Yeah.
I also was highly disturbed that Addie Barking got up and, had a really powerful speech. He's a renowned Medicare for All advocate, and he never said the words Medicare for All. And when we are editing our grassroots organizers and movement builders on public television, it's another example of, we're being used. We're being placated and we're being used. Our messaging is definitely, advertising. and edit it just so it will be fit in with the agenda that's, status quo.
But I think what is really super hard to watch, I saw a tweet from a journalist, I can't remember his name, but he was basically saying that watching the DNC, which I thought was really funny, Marianne Williamson said it was an extended Marriott commercial. He was saying that like they're doing all these concert-y things and memes and having Billie Eilish and whatever, and that the party is just really underestimating how strict on policy young people are right now, and how much they don't like being bullshitted. And I don't know what it's going to take. I mean, I think that it's just fundamentally, and it's just impossible for them to ever meaningfully engage young people, I guess, when their funding interests are at odds with that. But it's just painful to watch them trying and making fools of themselves, because this generation is actually smart as hell and has really big demands. So I don't know how this is going to turn out. I mean, they're definitely like going to lose an entire generation by continuing to do this.
But I think that the younger generation is doing a better job of knowing that our current system is pretty incapable of correcting itself. We are pretty unable, even when we get new people of color with radical ideas in there, they're so squashed out so soon. They're so threatened. They are so, there is no chance. And I think that at least what I'm seeing from young people is, they want to talk issues, they want to make change, and that they're seeing that maybe needs to happen in a different way, and certainly a bigger way than voting. Vote. We have a really scary fascist regime on our hands, but we are being offered really, really tiny, measures to bring us into any sort of well-being. I'm disappointed how much this whole and watching this, like, as you said, Bloomberg got all this time. Candidates that had delegates weren't even allowed to speak. And I think another thing that I want to say here is that, about Linda Sarsour being attacked over supporting the boycott, divest, and sanction movement, and how we as Americans are just, we have been brought in to think that, Israel is our ally no matter what, and our military should continue to fund that. And I think that there's a lot of young movement saying that's actually not okay. And these centrist ones that are, talking are all saying, oh, this is always how it's been, this is fine. And, Kamala Harris amongst them.
Yeah. One more ironic thing from the DNC that I just want to lift up is, Michael Bloomberg, who, in my opinion, should not be allowed anywhere at all, is a Republican through and through, in every way, shape, and form, and has, actively supported that party at different points. And he is, the architect of stop and frisk. And, he was like, rightfully just destroyed during the primaries, and I loved to see it. It was amazing. I was really proud, because I think that that came from like left Twitter, in my opinion, kind of, because a lot of people just didn't know about Michael Bloomberg, and so now a lot more people do. They know about his policing history. They know about his the way that he's treated women in the workplace, and they know his like awful transphobic comments. And yet somehow he was given a speaking spot. And Jamal Bowman, who, you know, ousted Elliot Engel in one of the most, I mean, that was a good day, right? A very establishment. Hillary Clinton endorsed Democrat. And I think he was on like, I think he chaired the Foreign Affairs Committee or something, but not the greatest guy. And Jamal Bowman, who was a middle school principal, I think, and, you know, very progressive and visionary. And he has actually been a victim of stop and frisk. So you've got this, you know, up and comer who's going to Congress, who, you know, kind of did the impossible, completely not allowed to participate in any way, shape, or form, while Michael Bloomberg did. And it's disgusting. That's all.
So I'm going to bring us back and let's talk about Flint. Didn't those people get like water? Aren't they just like fine? Didn't this get solved?
Pretty sure Flint still doesn't have clean water, Millie.
Oh shit, but nobody's talking about it anymore, Shelly.
Nope.
And now they're spitting out about $6,000 per person. What was it? Crazy settlement that does nothing, and they still have dirty water.
Yeah, so $600 million is coming from the state to be distributed among it's about 100,000 people who live in Flint. So that shakes out to $6,000 per person. Like, that's what they're saying makes up for not having clean water. I've gotten more than that from a settlement, from a car accident, you know, that wasn't years of not having clean water. I mean, that is just, it's hard. It's really hard to imagine. I can't like.
That's not even the living cost of 2 months. That's outrageous. How someone could expect, I mean, the lead poisoning, you have some numbers, right, on how much, but they're, so yeah, this is what we're saying. The 600, what was it? 600 million was the payout.
Mm-hmm.
The population of Flint is approximately 100,000. So that is just such an inadequate amount of money, not only to do anything for your own healthcare now, but I mean to do anything. And this is saying about 8,000 kids had lead poisoning.
Yeah, and then Legionnaires, I think, like, 150-ish people have died of Legionnaires that we know of.
And this is a community, we're not talking like, okay, go to the store and get yourself a couple gallons of clean water. These are, you know, when you're on the poverty line and you're choosing, you know, to make your rent or, you know, get clean water, you're fucking boiling the dirty water, you know? I'm sorry, but this is like outrageous. It's 2020, what is this, 10 years ago?
Yeah, I think that's about when it was. And then to see, I don't know. I'm not going to talk about that. I was just thinking about, real quick, Obama drinking the water. Saw that video this morning. And
oh, it's such a play. Yeah. Such a PR play. Yeah. But I mean, I think that's a really, when I go to have conversations with my neighbors, I mean, media has so much to do about it. I mean, so much, because I think that we're hearing the same quotes from politicians. I think we're all hearing the same words coming out of people's mouths, but we're not. We're hearing completely different translations of the actions of our representatives, depending on what news outlet you choose. And go ahead.
No, you go ahead. Finish what you're saying. So I was going to change the subject.
We're there. Let's change it.
So Patrick is wanting to talk a little bit more about direct action, which we love to talk about too. We're facing in corporatism the same kind of dehumanizing threat that the civil rights activists faced a generation ago. Do we have a direct action committee? So that's a great question. We at Move to Amend have had some, I mean, we kind of launched off of Occupy the Courts, Factoring Occupy, which was a big direct action campaign that was pretty successful. And then we have done some, we did the Free the People campaign, what was that, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, where we, did rallies outside of our representatives' offices, demanding that they sign on to the We the People Amendment. But we're in a different time now, right? There's so much going on. Kind of seems like, this is all hopefully going to coalesce into a large set of demands, right? That's what we're hoping. And we see our amendment as critical for everything else, to both pass and then stay protected and survive. So we're very, very pro direct action, although we don't really have anything cooking. We supported the people's bailout actions that were last month.
Of which this amendment was part of the demand, right?
Well, no, actually, so it wasn't part of the 5 demands that were, $2,000 a month, cancel rent, cancel debt, expand Medicare, paycheck protection program. So those were the immediate demands, but Movement for a People's Party was the organizer, and we are on their platform. So they do have the We the People Amendment as part of their larger platform. So they went to
an amazing thing being done right now is people showing up at Congress people's houses.
Yes, so that's what they did, and I think there were, some. I think Sherrod Brown in Ohio was amenable and said yes, and so obviously we still have a long way to go, but let's normalize that, right? Because especially when they keep going home and not doing their job, they're really asking for it at this point. But I know tomorrow there is another Occupy Congress. Let me see here if I can put it in the chat. But I know folks are going to the homes of Congress people again. I think I had it up. But if you go to the hashtag Occupy Congress on Twitter, you can definitely find.
And so, I mean, I think that this is an opportunity. I mean, as we've been talking about, we've talked about a lot of things here, but, a big reason for lack of progress and lack of people's will being carried forth is because of corporate constitutional rights. And so I encourage you all who are listening, if you haven't yet, please sign our petition at movetoamend.org/motion. This is a tool that we use to bring to our representatives, say, look how much support we have, get pledgers. Right now we have Pledge to Amend going on. This is where candidates at every level, from very, very local, school board seats all the way to, congressional seats, can take the pledge saying that they support the We the People Amendment. And that they will use their office to support it. It's a good way now candidates can use to get their word out. It's really hard to campaign right now. Again, we are nonpartisan. We do not support candidates, but we do allow them to take this pledge. Other ways that you can get involved now, financially supporting Move to Amend is huge. We're all taking a hard hit. All of our staff is actually right now on financial furlough, working by volunteer. We're all completely dedicated to this movement. Feel like this is the fundamental change that is holding back so many of the things that we need. Healthcare, sustainable energy, housing. It's really, really, really tied to the issue of corporate power. And the only way that we can assure that, a law won't be overturned by the Supreme Court is to go above them and pass an amendment. And so you can check out the details of our amendment on our website. We do have 74 co-sponsors in the House. This is the third Congress that's been introduced. We are getting traction. You know,
our goal is 75, so we only need one more congressperson to meet our goal. So that's really exciting. We're doing really great in that.
So we can use all of your help calling your congresspeople, saying this is a demand that we have, you know, for meaningful change, as we've been discussing. If we don't get this done, there is just too much chance out there that, you know, work will be undone in court.
Yep. All true. And yeah, just to reiterate, so Move to Amend being a political campaign, we're a 501c4, which meant that we were not eligible for relief through the CARES Act. And that's not necessarily a bad thing overall, because a lot of 501c4s are bad lobby people. So it is what it is. But, you know, we rely on grassroots donations only. So at a time of economic downturn, you know, we are getting more calls from people who just can't swing it right now and want to support. So if you are somebody who is in a position to support this work, you know, I'm on unemployment right now. I'm doing this on a volunteer basis, but I'm more committed than ever to this work. And we are, you know, energized and inspired by this moment, as terrible as it is. You know, we talked about, you know, crisis and shock doctrine last time Milly and I did a live stream about a month ago, and just, you know, how so many terrible things can happen in these times of crisis because we're all so overwhelmed and they're just pushing stuff through and nobody can keep up with what's going on. But at the same time, there's more potential for deep systemic radical change in a moment like this. So we, you know, we recognize that. And so we're doing our best to, you know, meet this moment and make sure that we can do the most possible good and deepest, most lasting change that we can do in this moment. And so all these different movements that are rising up, like, we just need to keep connecting our issues together and supporting each other. But we could really use your help to keep Move to Amend going, because this is very critical for the success of everything else. So if you go to movetoamend.org/donate, you can give a one-time donation, or if you want to help us be able to kind of plan and be sustainable, we do prefer monthly. So if you were going to give 100, you know, give $10 a month or whatever. That is actually better for us, because then we can budget and plan. So if you're able to do that, that would be amazing.
Also, if you belong to an organization, we are a coalition. We would love your endorsement. We would love to work with you in the future. You check out our website. There's an option there for your organization to pass a resolution or give their endorsement. We have hundreds of endorsements throughout the country, and you know, are consistently looking to gain allies on the front lines of other struggle, to sort of realize why this work is important. It is, you know, fundamentally tied to a lot of other really, really important organizing going on right now. And so we, you know, want to support each other in that.
So yeah, I don't know. Were there any questions? There were some really good comments that I don't know if we can respond back to all of them, but Karen was asking about our address. I do want to say that that is the right physical address, and feel free to send a check. I will say that we've been having, not just, you know, the last week or two, but just lately we've been having a lot of weird stuff with mail. So, but I also know that using it and paying to use it is good. So that's up to you. We've had to do a lot of weird stuff to get.
Oh, I can't even believe we didn't talk about the mail. Support the mail. Talk about stock doctrine. They're taking everything away. Education, the post office, like, no public, nada.
And while we should not believe DeJoy at all for 1 second, I do believe that his, announcement that he wasn't going to do any of those things until after the election is a direct result of occupying his lawn all weekend. So more of that. Stay on his lawn. Don't get off his lawn if you're near it. So, yeah.
All right. We love you all. Keep doing the wonderful work that you're doing. Write to us. Tell us how we can intertwine our work with yours. We do presentations. We've been doing these virtual presentations. If you ever want to get one of our speakers in front of maybe a group, a gathering of friends, a community of faith, anything like that, we'd really love to interact and continue the conversation. Also, another two of us will be here next week. I would love to give them a little plug. So, look at our gorgeous faces while I pull up this schedule. Linda Gillison and Lawrence Abbott, both active affiliate members and leaders in our labor caucus. I really want to lift them up. They're going to be presenting and talking next week. Come back, share this program. A lot of really, really good stuff in store from them.
And I also want to underscore, Greg said buy stamps, but also check out the USPS store because they actually have really cool stuff. They have like really interesting clothing, and it's a cooler store than I could ever imagine. So I do think they like kind of stepped it up for this, and we should go check it out and see if you want any like goofy USPS swag.
We're all gonna have USPS on next week.
So, all right. Is there anything else that we want to talk about?
So much more, but we'll stop ourselves and give you a break. Thank you so much for being here. Go to our website, share it with our friends, donate lots of money. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. Take care. We'll see you next week.